Hey guys, so we're a little bit early actually, and let me get over onto this other page and make sure I don't have an echo going here. And I do not. Perfect. Okay, so let me introduce you here to Yerf Dogs, and his name on Substack is Steve Godfrey. I put the links here in the chat. Basically, we met on a show called Finding Gnosis. I was just over there hanging out, and the host DNW said, "Come up," so I did. And then I thought, I wonder if they'd be open to talking about my court case, because that's why I'm always in this corner of the internet anyway. And so I wrote to DNW because I always want to make sure, since it's sensitive topics, if people are okay with me talking about it. And so he let me talk about it one day, and Yerf Dogs was here. And the first thing I noticed was that when I started bringing up activist Layla Micklethwait, he just said, "Oh yeah, she's a star." And I'm like, how does he know who Layla Micklethwait is? Nobody else does. So then he started sort of talking about antinatalism. Then I observed him a few more times talking about that, and CSAM. So I went and looked him up because I'm like, okay, and that stands for, if you don't know, child sex abuse material. So there's an intersect between, in my case, CSAM, and then the fans of this person are antinatalists, and then this guy has dealt with antinatalist, and then I've learned through him of a whole, edge of the internet, basically, where this stuff is being promoted, and it's just really, for lack of a better word, insane. So we're going to do a little dive into like why we think this happened, what's going on, and also what legally is going on right now, because a lot is. And he had some interest in what I'm doing, and I had an interest in what he was doing. So you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm going to assume that people. I'm looking at the chat. Probably, if anyone's from that group of people from Finding Gnosis, they know who I am. So I'm Steve Godfrey. I'm from New Zealand. Not currently. I've been living in Japan now for it's about 30 years. So it's coming up to half my life. So I guess I'm staying here. Yeah, as Emily said, we met on the Finding Gnosis channel. You started talking about the echo at your efforts there, which I've just been so impressed with what you've done. I noticed your description of me in the description under this video, mate. Compared to you, I'm just a rank amateur, mate. I'm just a guy on the internet with a channel. You're doing some heavy lifting with what you do. So you're the queen here, mate. I've got nothing on you. But I've been in the AN or antinatalist kind of scene since 2013. I was an antinatalist. I still subscribe to the idea that, at the very least, procreation is something which should be taken more seriously. I don't even know if you want to get into that whole side of things. But over the years, I don't know, call it unfortunate, and it is in many ways unfortunate. I just ended up learning a whole lot of stuff that goes on in this scene. And it's, yeah, as you say, it's whack. It's way out there. So people might be, I think, I heard you say this, I think it was yesterday. I think you said it, or maybe you wrote it somewhere. I can't recall. But you said something along the lines of, when you talk to people who are not connected in any way to what you're doing, their jaws kind of drop, and they kind of say to you, "Fucking hell, what's all that?" Oh, so this is your channel, so I should be mindful of what I say. Crikey, that's horrific. How do you deal with that? And I've noticed that with myself, and so have some other people who are kind of on my side of this game. We have become so inured to what goes on. Like it's just another day ending in Y, or somebody says something completely outrageous, and someone like me who's been here for a while, I just kind of, I just log it and go, well, that happened. Whereas other people from outside look at it and go, holy shit, what's that about? And I think it's a real, and I think you raised the point. We have to be careful. I think we underestimate perhaps what it does to us, because we just become, so it's just another, like I say, another day ending in Y. So I thought that was an interesting comment you made. So anyway, how's that for a starter to kick off the convo?
That's a wonderful start, and it's a good point that I, touch on sometimes. But the way you phrased it, like I remember one example would be my elderly mom. She observed me. I went to visit her, and she saw me looking at my email, And someone told me that I'd gotten like new death threats, and then she saw what I was reading, and she was like, "Emily, what in the hell?" She just couldn't believe some of the things, and and especially with her and people that care about you, I actually keep a lot of information away from people, coworkers and friends also, who just would think that this activism was a little bit weird because it's so sinister what we're dealing with, or they would think that it was dangerous also and would be concerned. So in order to not have to explain some of this also, because it's uncomfortable to talk about, it does compartmentalize who you can talk to it about. That's why I think, like, seeing you, I was like, oh my God, someone that knows what I'm dealing with, and he seems super normal, and he feels the same way, and he's actually continuing to do the activism and not freaked out, or and a lot of people, you'll see them start to work on things and then they'll kind of back off because as I've seen with you, I've seen the people trolling you who are in the scene, and they are very disturbed individuals. They tag you incessantly and say ridiculous, slanderous things about you. And even were tagging me at one point because I left a comment. So, and I thought, oh no, I have enough of those people, So it's a lot of things to deter activism, for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely that barrier to entry, and we can get into it at some point. It's the whole thing is kind of blowing my mind a bit, and I don't know if, again, you may be able to relate to this, but for me, when I found all the the CSAM stuff and blah 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 blah, when I brought that to light, my initial my anticipation was, and my expectation was, it would just be one and done. Like, I would say, look at this. This is terrible. We should get rid of this. And instead, it just turned into a fight. And I cannot. It's just kind of, and it still messes with my head a bit. Why do I have to make so much effort against this stuff? It should just be automatic.
Especially against these corporations. I mean, I always think of it in terms of, if I had a business, would I allow, CSAM to occur in that business, or would I thank the person that brought it to my attention that it was occurring and get rid of it? But the way they look, as a multi-billion-dollar corporation that has a lot of this going on and they're making money off of it, they actually don't look at it that way. They look at it as, we want limited liability, limited liability, limited liability. So, and you have the top two under Elon Musk richest people in the world are Google Alphabet. So, that's your answer. But a lot of people raise the question of, is it even bigger than that? Are they social engineering a depraved world? Is that what they want? I can see why people wonder.
Yeah, that's not actually as whack as it might sound. I mean, because I've had the same thoughts as well. I've noticed, probably due to the Epstein stuff, I kind of, like, I kind of check myself. I want to be cautious that I don't end up kind of going Alex Jones on stuff, But with the Epstein stuff, ever since then, I've just kind of noticed there's a real reticence against, I don't know, I mean, I could say everybody, but there seems to be so much pushback against it, which is just, in my mind, it's just so, before I encountered, maybe the way I can explain it is this, before I encountered all of this stuff, this was just an unspoken presumption. We didn't even need to talk about it. No one needed to articulate doing all this stuff to kids is bad. It was just a given. There wasn't a debate. You don't go to a party and go, so tell me your thoughts about child blah, 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 blah. It's not a conversation starter. So that's just the world I grew up in. It was just presumed. And every time it came up, perhaps, in the news or something like that, it would be the topic of conversation down at the pub for a couple of minutes, and you'd move on because there's nothing to talk about. Everyone just, intuitively or naturally agrees that's wrong. But now, to be in this side of things, it just baffles me, the pushback that there is. So
yeah, and that ties into something you brought up or you guys were talking about one day that I heard you. You were talking about how the internet, how it shapes the way we interact with each other. I think I was part of one of those conversations, but yeah, I mean, in one way, I think what you guys were talking about was how if you walked into a pub talking that way, someone would, check you right away, and it would kind of keep some social order. But online, people can go completely, basically batshit insane. It's one, way to put it. But and go deep into these dark fantasies that they're having and turn them into full-on philosophies. And I wondered, how much do you know about like because I did a small dive. Like the origin of this stuff is a lot older, antinatalism, for example. I noticed Noah said, why do you want to end life? And I would say, basically antinatalism would be the idea that, maybe the world involves a lot of suffering, and maybe you don't want to bring new life into the world yourself, and there's a spectrum to it, right? But this goes off the deep end way further into, believing, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes along with this, like the asymmetry argument that, because there's the presence of suffering, it's bad, the presence of pleasure is good, but because of the absence of suffering being good, even if none exists, then that makes it bad. I mean, it gets kind of convoluted to where it's a lot of mental gymnastics for me, because, but basically, biology, competition, and suffering mean that organisms survive by consuming each other and suffering, and therefore this world is just world bad, life bad. And then I don't know how you can function if that's your philosophy. But I kind of wanted your thoughts on how you think this evolved into this, and what do you know about that?
Okay, so I'll be as brief as I can. Antinatalism is functionally born out of philosophical pessimism. So, and that goes back to the cliches come out. It's in Ecclesiastes, which we all know is the most pessimistic book of the Bible. Questioning why we were born. Job is the same thing. Why did God make me? All this kind of stuff. There's a guy called Al-Mahdi. I think I may have butchered his name there. He's from way, way, way back when as well. Questioning procreation. Racing ahead through time. You get Schopenhauer, who kicked off the pessimistic tradition properly. It's all born from the idea that existence itself has disvalue. There is no, cosmic purpose to it, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so that's where it comes from. That's its roots. That's its genesis. You could even say Buddhism is antinatal in certain... Well, it's definitely pessimistic. Whether it's antinatal, I might be pushing the envelope a bit too far on that. So racing ahead, the version you gave is speaking to David Benatar, whose his book came out in 2006, but it's called Better Never to Have Been. But he actually did a paper 10 years before in 1996, which was outlining his asymmetry. So that's kind of the genesis of what you might call modern antinatalism. He wrote his book, and for some reason it caught on. It may be the zeitgeist. There's a lot of intersection with environmental activism, veganism as well, and I think all these things kind of working together. Benatar's book ended up taking off. More power to him. Cool. I mean, I've spoken to Benatar. I've had email contact with him on an irregular basis. I've done an interview with him. Good guy, blah, blah, blah. But he's not this is important. He's not an activist. His job is philosophy. So he's not, I think in reality, he does want people to stop having kids. He said as much. But when it comes to what we look at online, he is not interested in that, the activism side of antinatalism. And that's where things take a dark turn. And when I first came into antinatalism in 2013, I did get caught up in it. I was one of those people who believed that I was 100% right, and I would go against strangers on the internet telling them how bad they were for having kids. I was one of those guys. It's very easy and intoxicating to get into a position where you believe you've found the ultimate answer to the final solution, for want of a better term. And you get caught up in it, and good grief, looking back, I'm embarrassed by that. I'm ashamed by that. Luckily, that didn't last too long. I've always had a critical eye in the sense of I don't like certainty, and I was always concerned with myself because I felt so certain about this position, and that was an alarm bell to me. So that kind of, I don't know, protected might be a way of saying it, but or shield. I don't know what you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good word.
I'm sorry.
I think that's a perfect word. Okay. Shield or protected. Mm-hmm.
Right. So that, shielded or protected. So over time, I kept on asking, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? This could be wrong. How am I certain? Again, jumping ahead, I finally got to a point where I realized the reasoning isn't actually as strong as I presumed it was. What happens with antinatalists? And David Benatar has said this himself, I think publicly, but also in correspondence with me. I'm pretty sure he said it publicly, that a lot of people write to him and they say, thank you for writing your book and doing your interviews, because what you said is something I've always thought. And so what that means is antinatalists don't reason themselves into antinatalism. It's just something that it goes well, it matches or aligns with their intuitions that they already have. I mean, if you're like me, for example, you just have a bit of a darker outlook, you're a pessimist, of course, antinatalism is just going to click right into space like a jigsaw puzzle that was made for that space. It just fits. And then because there is reasoning, what happens is people tend to retroactively put the reasoning on top of it. And they go, wow, there's reasoning. Oh, well, therefore there's logic. Therefore I'm 100% correct because it aligns with my intuitions, yada, 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 all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's the personal stuff. So I got into it 2013. Around that time, there was a guy called Gary Mosier in Mendham. For anyone who's interested, he's the guy with long hair, the madman in the basement kind of thing. He's the guy that turned out to be the focus of this. For me, he was always on the fringe. I never got into him because I just found his signal to noise ratio just wasn't worth the effort to listen to. He would do maybe 2 or 3 videos, but out of that size of that chunk of time, there might only be one sentence which is worth anything. And even then, he's just repeating philosophical pessimism in a different way where I can read it in Schopenhauer or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't really pay as much attention to him as others did. Wasn't really a fan of his. Moving forward again, another guy in the scene. So this is where I started to notice the bad stuff. Another guy in the scene, I won't name him, but it turned out he had some very serious charges against him in this, but he ended up getting convicted for, if I remember correctly, it was domestic violence and a couple of other charges related to that. But because of that, he was into debating Gary. His whole thing was Gary. So looking into this guy, I ended up looking back into Gary. I was saying, oh, what exactly is this guy all about? And lo and behold, that's when I found that first clip where he was saying, if it gets you off, go and have a look at it, related to the CSAM stuff. And I was like, oh, holy shit. Can I say F on your channel?
You can.
Right on. So, because it sounds better. Just, holy fuck, what is this? And again, that comes back to what we said before. It's throughout my whole life, it's not an articulated position. You don't need to fight this stuff. But here's a guy, on one hand, he's preaching ethics and morality. We need to be ethical. We need to care about suffering. And on the other hand, he's saying, go for it. If you want to have access to the stuff, I think you should. And I've got no problem if you want to, rub one out to it. And I was just like, fuck me. That just blew my mind. So this comes back to what I just said previously in the conversation. I just put that online. My expectation was one and done. People would go, we don't want any part of that. Let's just ignore him. Let's make him a leper. But it turned out to be the actual opposite. People jumped in, defended him. I got mercilessly, again, when it all started out, I had one guy on my case accusing me of being a rapist and all this. That's never happened to me before. And it really messed with my head. And I was like, what the hell is all this about? It just messed with my head for a bit. I'm kind of, it's just another day ending in Y now. But so anyway, yeah. And so then I found out, so I put that online. I challenged him to respond to it. And he doubled down and then he tripled down. He did 2 responses and he made his position very clear that he was in favor of it. And you want to talk about the jaw hitting the floor. It's just like, you've got to be kidding me. You're online saying that I don't know if he's into it, but he's advocating in favor of it. And it's, holy shit. So I did a couple of responses to that and that was kind of the trajectory of everything. And now we're here. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And the same thing here with how things lead to other things that end up being bigger things, which is why sometimes I do believe something is guiding us towards a bigger purpose that we're not aware of at the moment. But I don't know if that's true or not, but I know why people feel that way because when this started, my interest in legal work was always like wrongful convictions, people that were medically harmed, stuff like that. But looking at kids being hurt, of course, I'm against kids being hurt, but it would be the last thing I'd pick as something to look at. I'd even turn down like people telling me, I had a friend that said I reminded him of his wife and she was a CPS investigator. Oh, you'd be good at that. And I was like, no way. I couldn't do that. I couldn't deal with that, every day, all week. So, when I saw this case and I saw it quite by accident in a way. Uh, I was looking at like diet related stuff. And then I, noticed right away that the one person advocating against veganism had said some other strange things. And what he ended up saying was, stuff related to cannibalism and serial killing. But he wasn't saying these things like they were bad things. He was saying them like they were awesome things. And he had a large following. And then I noticed, and mixed in with some truth, obviously, like schools or prisons. A lot of our food is garbage. Yeah, all that's true. Coffee can be bad for you, so on and so forth. But mixed in with this other.
Well,
And
coffee can be bad for you. Let's not go there, mate. Please,
okay,
let's not have that discussion.
we won't even talk about that in the mix here. But and he, by the way, he was drinking coffee as he was telling people this. We come to find out, and some people are more horrified by that than the crimes. But we won't go there either. But so this person is on the internet talking about diet and mixing and all this insanity. And you sometimes hope, I hope this is just someone trying to be edgy. Maybe they're not really this insane because people do that as well. And some of the reviewers will go along with things, believing, once again, there's kind of this safety net of, well, we're online, so it's just a joke. And so you're hoping, and then I see that he has this girlfriend, and she seems lovely. And then we see a video of her beaten up, and there's a video to get money because immigrants beat her up. We now know he beat her up. But then we see that there's a child being born. Then we see that she's left. Then we see him do a video doxing them and making up lies about her graping the little boy, which did not happen, and deploying people to call CPS on her, the equivalent in Europe. And we now have the video of her calling for help. They were showing up at her house. They were in hiding. He was deploying people off the internet to come and find them, to harm them. And, on and on we could go with the evidence for all of the subsequent crime, which involved her eventually being acid attacked, beaten almost to death, and the little boy's bedroom being firebombed twice. The first time they were home, but it didn't detonate. The second time it did. They staged it to look like they were home, but they were not. And he, throughout time, had all of these videos promoting INCEST. So it's not just CSAM, but it's with your own child, and making long statements, looking right into the camera, telling people why that's normal. A lot of people were treating that like edgelord stuff, like it was just being goofy, or they were ignoring it. But some people were eating it up. And right now he has a huge MAPS, which is Minor Attracted Persons group on Telegram. So right now he's online still, wanted for these crimes. He directs people from his YouTube to his Telegram, where they have for 500 a month, by the way, 500 monatlich, like 500 euros. It's in German, but that's what it's saying. 500 a month. You can be part of his Apex Predator or whatever group and get your Minor Attracted Persons INCEST talk on. And they've shown the baby girl in videos on this platform we're on. And so by way of law, as you know from my pleading that I was talking to you about, they have to turn that into the NCMEC. And so we're trying to strengthen those laws with these acts. But that these people are all into some satanic garbage, and all of this stuff is intersecting. His biggest fan that's threatened my life is an antinatalist, so that's why I came to know about that. And then it intersects into working on larger law and meeting people like yourself who have dealt with some of this. So yeah, that's where that intersects. But one thing for me, by the way, the false accusations that they make towards us, I want to make it really clear, like, one thing I hate about all of this is there's a lot of people online and there are people out in the world. One of my main interests was always wrongful conviction. And one of the worst kinds of wrongful convictions against people have been satanic stuff, some of which has been untrue, kid diddler stuff, some of which has been untrue. And so when people start talking about all that kind of crime, I really can't stand anybody being involved in my work that comes up with convoluted, half-cocked stories about anybody because, I don't want them mixed into this activism. I've had a few that I've like cut off from interacting with me when they do gossipy type of content about people proving up nothing. There have been fake cases in the past, but this is real, and we have, mountains of evidence backing it up. And so, yeah, that's something to really be mindful of. I wondered if you had any of that, people trying to kind of interact activism wise with you, but they're kind of more on the gossipy end of the internet.
I think what I've experienced is more of a parasocial, and not to me, but towards Gary and others involved. There's a handful of people who you could call the influence of antinatalism influencers. The parasocial tolerance, I guess you might call it. Maybe that's one way of phrasing it. That where they can't do anything wrong. There was that situation on Finding Gnosis recently where Danny Shine came on and he said, well, you need to look to Gary for ethical and moral lessons. And Danny knows the stuff he said. I was just like, what? But the people, I don't know. You said earlier in this discussion, compartmentalization. Maybe that's what people do. They compartmentalize where their hero that they have a parasocial relationship with. It's the same with the guy you're talking about. I'm presuming. I mean, crikey, that Telegram group just sounds horrific. Anyway. But there's obviously parasocial stuff going on there. And I wonder if people, I don't know, maybe the difference I'm thinking between what the person you're dealing with and my side of the fence, the people on this side of the fence purport to position themselves as uber ethical and uber moral people. And I don't know if the guy you're talking about is that he's in that sphere. He's more just, I don't know. I'm not going to mention his name until you do, but I've looked at some of his stuff and I do remember him from the past. Like he was eating squirrels or something, wasn't he?
Yep. I'll say wanted fugitive Gaddis Lagston's, who is Godus and Spheria on YouTube. Yep.
Okay. I'll call him Godus. That'll be the way to do it then. Okay. Is that all right with you?
Yes.
Okay. So I remember seeing, I do remember in real time watching that, because, you wander around and circles kind of collide. And I remember Vegan Gains doing something about it. I just thought, my goodness, that's whack, and now I'm here and meeting you and you're telling me there are people on his Telegram group and he's charging 500, whatever currency it is a month.
Yep.
And people are doing that. Again, this is just another day ending in Y, but there's still that part of me that just goes, what the frick is going on? That's insane.
He had a whole group who were calling him Lord Godus. And what's funny about this is his girlfriend before Diane, he told her he was Jesus. She had mental issues and she believed it. And I thought that sounded so crazy that it might be a made up story. And then now we have him doing it online. And these guys from his Telegram group, he made them make videos praising their allegiance to Lord Godus, and they were doing it. And so, and we made some content out of it. But so
is it serious or are they joking? Sorry to cut you off, but
I think they are serious, and some of them looked, like they were mentally disabled, frankly. And I'd add to that, that's another dynamic here. They're giving this person access to minors on the internet because he has his links that you can click on to consult with him for $100 or $200 an hour from this platform, and then the links to the other platform, which there's a whole legality issue with that of, we're not facilitating anything he does off this platform, but you are when you have him promoting it on this one and providing the links to go to that one and do the INCEST stuff. So.
Yeah, because you do kind of wonder, and again, I still do wonder. When you see stuff, you in your head, you're thinking, is this just edgelord? Like you referred to this as well. Are they just trying to be super edgy, or are they actually genuine in what they're saying? And then they confirm again and again and again that they're not being edgy. That this is what they believe, this is what they want, and this is what they're into, or what they want to do, or what they want to achieve. And again, another thing you said earlier in this space, in this conversation. It's correct that online it's easy for the fringe to coalesce and form groups, and therefore they think that they're normal. Whereas, because they're together in a group of people, and they think, well, we've got this group, and we're all thinking the same thing. Oh, we're not as fringe as we thought. Whereas in the real world, these people are just spread out so thin that they are fringe. But they're kind of this, what would you say, a false momentum develops, and they actually think they're doing something, and then that's when it becomes actually dangerous. Because as you, and can I just point on something else you said, they're leading minors to this space, and that is kind of my thing with what I'm involved in as well. It's, you're leading everyone who is not categorically against this stuff and what this guy is saying, and you're sort of funneling people to his supporters. You are leading minors to a person who is on record preying on kids, who is on record saying, all that other stuff. And that just starts to make my blood boil. But I'm just thinking, what that is, again, I mean, I could just end up going off the edge on that stuff. But it makes me, I don't even know if I can process that, to be honest.
Same. And the little girl with them, I didn't even think about that. I was thinking about just the two victims. And then Diane, the victim of the acid attack, brought it to my attention. When she saw his video holding her in his lap, that all those videos he made about that, and that he was a fan of Ian Watkins, who went to jail for raping many babies. That was this lead singer of the band called the Lost Prophets. He made, and we've seen the videos now of him praising the guy. He actually died in prison due to the way they received him there. But we saw the daughter, and she brought that up, and all the old videos, of course, of him promoting that. Well, the April 2023 live stream he made, he's actually saying that he is actively abusing the baby. So that's part of the case. They're well aware of that. They can even see the child physically. And so that's all ample evidence, and more than you even need. And so the fact that they would get in my way, that's what I was very naive in the beginning, and I know that corporations are corporations, but I thought this is so extreme, there's no way that they're not going to see this and say, okay, and when we did the first investigation, I thought, well, maybe I just didn't have enough. And we did a second one. She wanted to see more. And I thought, well, I have more. And then when I knew what all I'd put in there and they still were balking at acting, I thought, God, I'm so naive that I thought, and now I know how many of these kinds of things there are. And Layla Mickelwaite on X, I could actually share this really quick, or I'll just read it to you actually, but let me see. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so 15 individual lawsuits on behalf of child abuse survivors, child sex abuse survivors, will be proceeding against both Visa and Pornhub. So that's as of July 10th. So those cases that I talked to you about before are ongoing, meaning that Visa is well aware that they're profiting off of child sex abuse material, and and it's not some accident. It's not a cosmic accident by any means, and they're going after them now.
Yeah, I'm actually interested. I want to just flip the convo back on its head a little bit. How did you end up on this trajectory? How did you end up getting involved? What's your history here?
You mean with this particular case?
Yeah. How did you end up being in the position you're in?
So that was just me trying to decompress and look up diet stuff. I'd been a vegetarian and I was thinking about being a vegan, and I was looking up vegan content, and then I looked up anti-vegan content to see, did anybody have any problems on the diet? And I found one of his videos where he's saying some of this weird stuff. What he actually said in that video was, so our ancestors ate human flesh and drank blood, but he said it like it was just a delightful thing, not a disturbing thing, because there's some truth to that. There were people that did that. And then I looked at some of the other videos and saw some of the other strange comments about how if we were being natural, we would be playing baby head football. And he said things like, the only thing holding you back from, abusing children and drinking blood and doing all this insane stuff is religion and morals, which are all man-made. That's his whole thing. So it kind of ties into this Efilism mentality in a way that, we should just be doing whatever we want. This dark turn that antinatalism took for some people. Not that he cultivated his philosophy that heavily, but he borrowed things from a lot of places. But it was mostly just his depraved mind that he was unleashing. But again, you think, good grief, this is so crazy. This is to be an edgelord, or you hope that it is. But I, would watch periodically, like a lot of other people did. He picked up other people like myself that were kind of troll watching, not part of his little group, but just watching periodically. And one of them started a channel parodizing him. And then these crimes started happening. So that main person was Jake Gibson, and he has a channel called Jake the Awake. And he had a parody channel called Spheriagotus Parody Videos. So he parodized the guy. And I would actually get all my news from there. Then I didn't have to watch Spheriagotus anymore to see what he was up to. I could just watch the parody guy. So I would watch Jake's videos and keep up with. And then it got to the point of now we're talking about an acid attack. And I remember when I first heard that, we didn't know if it was her or not. And I hoped whoever it was, they were okay. And I hoped it wasn't her. But then we find out that it was her. And then she's coming back online to maximize their safety, asking for help. So I posted, that's when I very first ever wrote anything to either of them. And I posted to her, I said, I told her some legal things she could do. And people were saying, you can't do that. You can't do that, and I also started getting trolled. So people don't really listen to you too well in the comment section. And by the way, Gaddis is known for having many, many, many sock accounts, which I've had to deal with now. We know which ones are his in some instances because Diane lived with them and knows who they are. One of them threatened to me, his son, that if I kept on, he would harm him, which we know he would anyway. And I've been threatened and everything else. But nonetheless, when I first did this, I was just trying to tell her what she could do. And then I saw what a hard time she was having with that they were in hiding, that she's under like legal insurance. There's certain things she can't do and stuff. So I thought, well, is there something other people could do that were scammed by him? Because scams are a part of this. So I thought, maybe I need to make content. Because I had already been going to use this channel to make content about something else with a friend of mine. And then I scratched all that. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, I have to make it safe. So I took all my social media stuff and made it, obscure, like where I'm from and all that kind of stuff. Because I was like the Robert Kennedy organizer in my state. So I took all that and made it ambiguous where I'm from and all that. And then I used pictures that were not from anywhere else and stuff like that. And I created a parody channel because there were by then like 5 Spherias people, but all of them were like 2 or 3 of these people are very serious activists, actually, not just people doing silly things. And they have evidence and documents, and they unleashed a lot of information. And privately, they've given me a lot of information. But I thought, well, there's no Primal Bell. So the lady he used to help with this attack is Primal Bell on YouTube. That's the other dynamic. She's also a wanted fugitive, and she's the person who supplied him with the baby he may be abusing. And so I did a parody of her, and I made some little videos pretending to be from Kazakhstan and making the silly voices and doing storylines, and people liked those. But then I flipped it serious by about the 3rd video, and I thought I'll probably have no viewers after this. And then people actually were more interested in that. So yeah, that's kind of how I got involved in that. And then I decided, well, what can I do if I can't get people to go after him for the scams? And I thought we could get a subpoena that way. And trying to talk to European law enforcement agencies is almost impossible. They don't talk to Americans. So I did cybercrime complaint forms first, telling YouTube everything and Google, and then showing them their legal obligations. I looked up case law, and I showed them where they would have liability upon me telling them this. And then that didn't work. And then I waited, and I went back and forth for a while. And then I decided I'm going to file a mandamus, because if you're talking about CSAM, you have to turn that into the NCMEC, and that makes you act like a state actor. And other people, it turns out, have tried to use this for other things related to companies as well. But I thought I might be able to do this. And the judge, when we ended up having a hearing, was very interested in it. Most people don't even get a hearing. So I really threw everything in the kitchen sink into that and created that first action. So that's how.
And the way you're describing it, it makes me think of a bit of a cliche. You have the law, but then you have the legal system. And these are 2 different animals, different beasts you need to contend with. The law is easy at the end of the day. You just take facts, throw them into the statute or the case law, and if they fit, they fit. If they don't, they don't. That's a crude way of saying it, but that's what you do. So it's easy. You hear a lot of people online, they've watched a couple of episodes of Maverick or whatever that legal thing was. And they go, well, I know that the law is on my side and yada, yada, yada. And that's fine. That's cool. Go ahead and try. See how far you get. Because the legal system is a completely different animal. Like you say, you can do everything the law requires. And even if it mandates a response, you may not get a response. And these people can hide behind, I don't know, indifference, power, whatever. And there's very little you can do in some situations, unless, of course, you want to throw a whole lot of resources at it. I'm talking financial, time, mental, all that kind of stuff. I mean, there was a landmark case in Ontario. This is I'm not I don't want to make this all about me, but just as an example, so we'll get back to what you're talking about, where a real estate company or several real estate agents had been defamed for years by an individual who was dissatisfied with their service. And these people always go to the same accusations in public. That you're a pedo, you're a rapist, all that. I don't know what it is. They all have the same textbook. They all do the same stuff. And these guys spent, it was something like 15 years through the legal system. The law was always on their side. And also this person was decided not to get legal counsel. They decided to act pro se. Now, if you don't have some kind of qualification or grounding in law, acting pro se is a dangerous move. If you do have, like, if you're a paralegal, if you've been trained in law, acting pro se, you can probably fare a better chance for yourself and the other party. But when someone who's an absolute numpty starts going pro se, they just cause so many problems. It just becomes really inefficient. So at the end of the day, 15 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars poured into this case. And the most they got out of it was just an injunction for her to stop saying the stuff. That was it. And so, it's there's a big imbalance, and I don't know if you want to talk about this, but what happens online, but what you're talking about is not just we're talking serious stuff like acid attacks, incest. So, and you said someone's giving their baby up, like offering their child. What the hell? I mean, that just hits my brain and goes, what? So you're dealing with real world stuff, but you have to fight so hard, and you never know. It's always a gamble. Again, the legal system. You don't know what's gonna, what end result you might get. You might win, but win what?
True. And, when you jump into something like this, you don't think about anything but what you're trying to do. And then you think, wow, like I've watched cases where somebody stayed, like they were the attorney, for example, for a client that was wrongfully convicted. One named Jesse Miskelly, for example, his attorney stayed with him for the full, I believe they were in prison 18 years. And of course he did other work in the interim, but he stayed working on that case for that full amount of time. And a lot of these cases take that long. So when you start with something like that, I'm sure you don't think, wow, I want to be doing this for 18 years, and when you look at something this horrible where we are talking about little bitty kids, babies, one of them's living in hiding, the other one might be being abused to the point where she won't be all right, and that even gets me kind of emotional, and they don't care, and they are actively working against me, and anybody else that wants to help. And a lot of also approaching other larger entities, because you touched on that aspect. So that's one reason they think people won't do this. They'll, tap out money-wise or time-wise. And for me, I've done everything without paying. So I did this. I filed it in between jobs, and then there's things you can do to prove up that you have a right to continue the case, and that it would be a hardship and a burden to put on you to make you have to pay. So I've made it cheaper for myself, but by now it would have cost thousands of dollars for someone to do it that didn't do that and didn't know about how to do that. So that's been good. But to really litigate against this corporation for a long period of time, if we get into that point, it would cost a lot. And a few people I've approached, like it's a great pat on the back to have a huge tech firm tell you that you did a great job and they would love to help you, but they don't have the bandwidth. I made a video showing what they said on my channel, because I was, proud of it, but also wanted to let people know, like we don't have that kind of help. If anybody knows anybody that does want to touch this with a 10-foot pole, let me know. But they also put me into the database for the EFF, Electronic Frontier Foundation, which I wrote to them because there is the scam aspect, and they said yes, what I showed them does fit their criteria, but they can't take it on right now. And they do have priority on cases, but this would be a quagmire, and they know it. They'd be battling them forever, and it's such a broad issue. So I'm in their database. Gloria Allred, for example, wrote me back, hey, great job. Not her specifically, but her firm. Great job. I think that this is something, I'm not telling you not to pursue it, but it's not, right for us. So that's kind of everybody's thing, is a great job, but we're not going to help, and it's kind of disheartening. It's a combo, heartening and disheartening at the same time, because you're doing the right thing and that they know it too, but that they're not going to take it on is, kind of puts you back to, you're at the table figuring it out yourself, but we're not going to give up. And I do think there's something to tying it into working on the legislation aspect, because these politicians would want recognition for doing something amazing with this, and that could all tie it together in a very unique way.
Well, let's get into that. So your initiative with the ECHO Act. So again, you can fill in gaps. So my understand, who drafted that? Did you draft that?
No, I didn't draft the ECHO Act.
Okay. I don't know. Was it the senator you're with? Yeah, I don't even know the names.
Yes, I believe Senator Grassley is the one that
Right.
brought that forward, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay, so he got him and his staff. So that's I mean, that is fantastic. I mean, in my opinion, despite what you've just told us, that even though there's reticence to get involved, to get a senator involved like that, and to actually get legislation like that drafted, that is an incredible achievement, and I take my hat off to you for that. Really, that's awesome.
And they got it all the way to the hearing point too. They've had.
I'm sorry, say it again.
They've got it all the way to the point where they've had three different people give testimony in a hearing. That's further than most of them get. So getting that one past the bottleneck point can happen.
It's fantastic, mate. So I guess the question then is, so what's happening now? Because I mean, we talked a little bit in private about perhaps moving on to subpoenas. Like, there's obviously you obviously have to do things in a certain way to get things done. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So for my court case, it's in the appeals process. So I did manage to get it into the Court of Appeals because I kept it going long enough to have a written record. And if I'm going to do that on the Substack, and we could talk further, because there's so much reversible error. They treat it like a Section 230 case, like it's about the taking down of content, opinion-based content, and this is about crime and about whistleblowing on crime and anti-SLAPP laws, which she kind of ignores. So I don't think it'll be, if it's honorable, what goes on, it won't be too hard to prove that up. And I've managed to get everything filed correctly. They're going to keep my confidentiality. There's all this stuff you have to do to make sure all that happens, and that's happened. So the next step will be when they send me, the call to put in the first pleading. So on these acts, so I don't know if I talked to you about the June 23rd human rights thing that they were having, that they now are not having. It's a hearing. It was basically, is this social media's big tobacco moment, basically, and it was Senator Grassley that brought this forward. So of course it would tie great in with the ECHO Act, which I'm sure will be brought up. But they're going to basically have the major CEOs of Meta, Google, Facebook, and all these corporations to speak on what are they doing to protect children. So they were going to present all the glorious things they're doing to protect children. So I wanted to make sure, and that's why I talked again to the Justice Defense Fund, which is Layla Mickelwait's org, about putting forth some written testimony in there about, no, you're not. You're actually actively fighting, protecting children, including specific children who about what's going on with them. And you have an active role in not doing anything about it and in profiting off of their potential harm, the concealment of that other child that's obviously traveling off of the money they're earning off of YouTube to evade, where other parents evade arrest. So that's what we were going to do, and I would have their backing on that. They canceled the hearing with White House help because this happens a lot of times. The CEOs balk at being there. They want to have a stand-in, basically to answer certain types of questions. Their glorious schedules are too busy. They'll also balk at certain questions being asked, and just on and delay the process. So we were looking at July. Now it's kind of up in the air. But another thing that's fixing to happen, that will happen though, that hearing will happen. But there's going to be a human rights conference. There's one in the summer, but there's a bigger one in the fall. and it's going to touch on these same issues at some different organizations, and I'll put something out in the future about this, but it'll be like October-ish, November-ish, and that one you can speak at. So I'm going to be kind of careful about posting certain things, but because there's several of them, and the weirdos won't be able to figure out which one I'm talking about being at or whatever, but around the time I'll post stuff. But being there, speaking, and actually talking to these people, getting the written stuff into the record means that the staffers will read it. They can take it back to the senators, and speaking is even bigger impact.
Yeah, it's I like, so there's two avenues, I guess. One is the judicial way, one is the legislative way. I guess the preference is the legislation. That's what I'm guessing. Like, because if you can nail that, then the courts have to follow. I mean, yeah.
Because
that's my presumption. So,
the ECHO Act would expand upon code we already have. It just makes it even that much more specific.
Right, right. Yeah, that. Yeah, I mean, who am I to comment? But that would be where my efforts would go. However, you've got to go through the judicial system as well. It's. I don't know. I'm just thinking it from the attorney side. I get it. I really do understand. From the side of like X, YouTube, those Meta, those guys, I understand what they're doing. I get it, and of course they are. That's what they're paid to do. We all know. I mean, anyone who has any involvement with law, it's not. I mean, people who, there's two ways of viewing it. That people see lawyers as just sharks who just amoral people or immoral, and they're disgusting people. Yeah, we all know lawyers' jokes, and I'm a big fan of them. But on the inside, really it's you're representing your client to the best of your ability, which, whether we like it or not, that is actually healthy for the legal system. You think of a defense case in a criminal case. You might have someone who commits a horrific crime. Someone steps up to defend them, and people go, "Why are you defending this horrible person?" Well, it's actually really important that the person gets the best defense, because that's how our law shuts down certain defenses to horrific crimes, for example. So I really do. I'm totally on your side. Don't get me wrong here. I'm 100%, 110%. But I really do appreciate that the other side has to do what they're doing, whether that's stalling techniques or whatever, filing counter motions, et cetera, or just ignoring you. I get why they do that, and it's kind of, and again, that makes me circle around to legislation. It's there needs to be, but again, I'm just spitballing here. This is just me stream of consciousness. But when I think of Section 230 of the Communications Act, any changes that you are successful in implementing or getting executed, it cascades into a whole, there are consequences. It's going to snowball, which could snowball through through the entire legislative apparatus. You could actually, this small thing could just, if it's successful as it stands now, it really does just snowball through all that shit. And that may be what they're trying to protect, because they're on easy street. They don't want to be policing this stuff.
And that's the court that they operate out of, basically, because they have jurisdiction, is one that it has been caught red-handed with back pocket, judges paid off to side with corporations.
Right.
I'm not saying that's happened with this corporation, but
right.
my guess is that and like one thing that happened, for example, just to give you an example, and again, not saying it happened, nefariously, but when you're pro se, you're not sure quite how to do certain things. And I filed everything under the confidential tab. And so I thought, that would be held that way until we could have our first hearing. And then I was filing a motion to seal certain things, or redact them rather, because, if you file things as a Jane Doe, there's a whole rigmarole, and there's nothing, it's not like this was a domestic case, or I had an odd standing in this case. It's a mandamus for them to take an action on behalf of, at that time I was thinking the public, but then with the breach case, I have personal standing. But anyway, it made, filing those kind of documents for protection really difficult. So I just filed it as me, and then I was going to do that later. Well, after talking to the head lawyer for the big billion, really $1 trillion law firm, and her knowing I did that, the literally next day, everything was opened up, and the court clerk told me, that you can't file things confidentially in a civil case. It's a public matter. And so I explained the dangers here and the death threats, and she did feel bad, but she told me that she had to do that. So I told her, what do I need to do to get that done? And so in our first hearing, the judge agreed with what I showed him, but he said I needed to have more case law actually to have it sealed. So my address was exposed for months, and I filed everything he asked me to file. I found all the law I needed to find, and then it took time waiting on that ruling, which he ruled to seal it. And so that's when my address got redacted. So I do feel like things like that could be retaliatory, but.
Right, but the problem there, of course, is once your address is known, it's known. You can't unring that bell. Even if you were to file everything confidentially from now on, it's kind of, it's pyrrhic, isn't it? It wouldn't really be meaningful. And also, we all know how the real world operates. Judges and CEOs, they have cocktail parties together. Let's not kid ourselves.
Exactly.
And senators and all that. And no disrespect to you, because I'm in the same circle as you, basically. We're the plebs. We're not invited to these parties. We don't get to socially network and say, hey, how about just why don't you just kind of put a bit more weight on this side of the scale kind of thing?
Yep. And my favorite thing that she would say, the attorney representing them, is, I can't speak to that. I can't speak to that. I can't speak to that.
Yep.
So, I mean, and in a way, I agree with what you said about, obviously, I think everybody's entitled to their best defense, but some things are so indefensible that full transparency to me is better. And a lot of law is a game. That's the part I resent. And in a way, it's a fun game for some people when they figure out, like I had to figure out a way to make this, get it in there, like mandamus action. Oh, I figured that out. And then if that won't quite work with the FOSTA SESTA and all the stuff, because I don't have everything worked legally except for my standing issue. So then breach makes it an issue where, because I've been retaliated against in terms of my channel and I have a contractual relationship with the company, I now have standing too, and I can weave it all together that way. And then they'll claim, well, we don't have to take an action though on behalf of you to take them down. So like there's always a little loophole to just not get something done, when if we just looked at something as it really is, like we're talking about CSAM abusers, wanted fugitives, making money, and you making money off of it, it is crime. Let's cut all the crap and just do something about it. I can see why people resent the entire legal system based on the gaminess of it. You know what I mean?
100%. And so let me clarify exactly what I'm talking about, just so I don't sort of give the wrong impression. Everything I've said is true. I support what I stand on what I said. However, I should also add, like you're talking about like a lawyer who says, I can't answer that, I can't respond to that, I can't speak to that. Look, I get it. I've been, if you're a lawyer, you've been there. That it is a game. You play the game that way. In my opinion, that's where the legislature should step in, and but case law. That's more of a, that kind of thing is a case law thing, perhaps. But this is why I think we vote people in to make laws which are useful for society. And I think in my opinion anyway, I think that the legislature should be more proactive in making law more accessible is the wrong word, but I'm trying to think of the word. Like you're talking about crimes that have been committed. It should be easy to prosecute these crimes. And it should be easy perhaps to compel these companies to act, whether that means giving over information, whether it means cutting off their account. I mean, as simple as that. I mean, some of them won't even do that. And they'll hide behind the free speech thing. So although I've just rambled there, but the point I'm making is it is a game. It's a push me, pull you thing between the legislature and the judiciary. And I think that the legislature needs to pull a bit more weight, as it were, put a bit more force into what they're doing. And that's so crudely put, but hopefully that lands.
No, I understand, and I agree with you. I just do think it's sad to have to draft additional legislation when I've got it in there. But when we do that, as you're saying, it will be buttoned up to the point where it's pretty clear exactly what kind of crime we're talking about, if it isn't already, which I believe it already is. But then it's going to be unmistakable that when these certain things happen, which all of society except for the true plebs agree is a problem, then we can actually make them take an action, and they can't hide behind
Is
their wealth.
Interpol involved with this at all? Have you got them into this?
They are Interpol fugitives. The problem is getting them on the red list, and if they're not on the red list, they're not publicly listed. So
gotcha. Okay,
but through Diane's attorney, we know they are on Interpol.
Okay, and so and again, there is some stuff I know you can't say publicly, but I assume that you and Diane are in contact. And are you talking to her attorney as well? Like, are you?
No, but I've been involved with. She's made me aware of certain things because also she had a change of attorneys and things like that. So.
Okay, I got you. So your next step is, what specifically? Because you're getting over the delays at this point, right?
Yep,
your July hearing was. Sorry, you speak. You go.
Oh, that's okay. My next step is waiting on them to get back to me on the appeal, and I've already drafted most of that pleading, and then trying to get a written record into the face of a bunch of senators. And by the way, I've written to, also this may sound silly, but over time, and people made fun of me for this, but I wrote to Ted Cruz because he was part of the Take It Down Act. I know he sucks, but like I said, if these people want attention for doing something great, they might bite and want to do something. So Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, Melania Trump, because she was talking about the Take It Down Act and things they'd done to Barron online. Who else? The senator out of Minnesota, Klobuchar, because she was part of the Take It Down Act. Yeah, I've written to a lot of politicians and senators already, but and sent them things. But and even in Canada, because the perp's ex-wife, who was helping with these attacks at one time or going to, she ended up leaving him before it happened. But she was even caught at the back fence of the house with him. They were planning on doing something then. She was from Canada. And he actually sextorted her, and those videos were posted from YouTube to Telegram. That's what got the Justice Defense Fund interested in the case, because it involves sextortion on these platforms, which they actively work on. So that I wrote to the PM of Canada about, because they have no limits on extraditing someone to Canada. He could actually be sent there for that. That would be another reason why they might want to get his information from these corporations. So, yeah.
So have any of the corporations been subpoenaed by the authorities to get this info?
I can't find that out because of being in America. Okay. They don't have to tell me. That's a wonderful question. I do wonder. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. You see, that's the thing as well. I'm hearing. Well, that's the feeling I'm getting as well. You're kind of going. You're very limited on what you can see.
Yep.
Your vision is like a few feet in front of you, but the darkness. You're not really seeing what's going on. That's what I kind of thought.
There's also go ahead.
No, okay, I was just going to say, I won't mention the person's name, but I do know a journalist stateside who might be interested in this. Have you been in the media at all? Is that something you're interested in?
We've been approached by media in writing to buy her story and to talk to a couple of us. It's an LLC, but that hasn't materialized yet. But that's the only thing like that.
Okay, I'll see if I can hook you up with this person, and you great. Guys can, if it works out, it works out. I don't know.
That'd be amazing.
But yeah, so again, my image of you, just my impressiveness, is that an English word, increases. Because you are, because of the I mean, it's basically a global case, and the effort you're doing. Again, I hate that, because I imagine a lot of people have been there. You are operating without a radar, as it were. You can't see blips out where you can't see, and you don't really know what's going on. You don't know what you don't know, and all that kind of yada yada yada. What about Layla Micklethwaite? Have you? Because she's lovely as well. Lovely in the sense I only know her by public. I don't know her at all, but she's fantastic. Have you touched base with her at all?
I talked to Amber Davies, who works with her,
right.
And she has my stuff presented to them as something that I'll have backing for the Echo Act thing when we do that, whenever that hearing actually happens. So we have that.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, what she's accomplished is, I mean, just again,
Yeah.
hats off.
And that's
off, mate.
another one of those weird things where I was online drafting the revised pleading, and that's actually what put it into my mind to focus heavier on the CSAM aspect, even than the raising funds to commit the acid and beating attack, was the CSAM. Get that as the main thing that you're talking about, which, duh, obviously. But at the time, when you're fixated on one crime and there's other crime occurring, it's kind of, you can be blindsided by which thing should be the biggest focus. And so, yeah, that's funny how you can just run across something and it ends up reshaping what you're doing in a way that works.
Right. And this is not being facetious, but I think back to when the mob got done back in the days of Prohibition. They ended up doing, I can't remember the people, but they ended up, basically they did them on mail fraud. They got them on these minor things, and that's what got them off the streets and in prison. And you're talking about the scam nature. There's a scam going on. And again, I'm not being facetious, but that could be the easier route to just get this guy off the streets.
That too, the scams. So that's another thing too. That involves all kinds of stuff. Because you asked me about one of the parts of law, and you were like, "What does this have to do with this?" And I was like, and I had to look it up again myself, and I'm like, "Oh, that has to do with the scams, like their reporting duties and stuff." Another state actor thing, and also that when I reframed it around breach of contract, they're not to allow one party to commit scams and other people not have access to, it's considered an unfairness of the contract if a party is knowingly introducing scams into their channel. So it's just amazing how many different things this touches on, and then at the same time you have seen people and that talk about a Section 230 speech issue. I mean, we've had people have their channels taken down for upsetting a corporation,
Right. Exactly.
And then you have this ungodly mountain of crime. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, and it's all over the place, isn't it? I mean, and like on X, you see the powers that be on X. They'll sometimes send out a viral post which ends up going viral. Oh, we're cracking down on this, but then all the replies underneath are going, "Really? Are you? I can still see shitloads of this stuff." Mm-hmm. And it just, it's there. So I wonder, like the case with Gator, so I'll use that because that's what you call them. I wonder if it's just a drop in the ocean. Like for you, it's massive, and for Diane, it's massive. And in no way am I taking away from that, because it really is massive, especially with the stuff that's happened in reality. But I wonder also, are you just another drop in the ocean of probably millions of this?
I know. Someone said that to me, and then I thought, oh, heavens no, there can't be that many CODISes. And then I saw a story just the other day about someone that had unalived people and was on this platform. And I do wonder how many there really are. So absolutely, I think that's part of why they don't want a precedent being set. There are many, many, many of these situations.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay, yeah, that's another point I hadn't thought of. Yeah, once you set the precedent for one, yeah, that's it then, isn't it? They're locked in. Wow, yeah, good point. Exactly. Very good point. I mean, that's what I found with the DMCA stuff that I got tripped with. At first, I was livid, but then I look online. I'm just a nobody. There's millions of instances of this, so you just kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah, and also that brings up the free speech issue. I agree with the statement that the way you cure deficiencies in speech or whatever, I think RFK put it, flaws in speech or wrong speech would be more speech. So we don't want to cut off people's speech, including, to me, people that are a little bit wacky. I want to know where they are and what they think. But when you're getting into talking about, like, it's exactly where your rights end and mine begin when you're talking about serious crime. So obviously, and of course they're going to hinge on pretending that this is some kind of stepping on speech rights, stepping on sexuality rights. When the buck doesn't stop with protecting children, where does the buck stop? You know what I mean?
Right. And again, that's one of those positions that don't normally need to be articulated.
Right.
That's just what people think. And then when you're confronted, and I think you've probably found the same thing. I think you've already answered this. Like, once you are involved in one specific case, you do start to notice there are lots of other similar cases. And so you realize, oh my goodness, that's stuff that until now I've never needed to articulate a defense for. Like I have to defend why this stuff is bad or explain. And suddenly you realize it's all over the place. It's
And
just
then where
and
and then where are the protect the kids people? You know,
right.
the protect the kids people that are flipping out about a book or flipping
Yep.
out about a
Yep.
movie and
Yep.
hello,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. 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 That's my answer to that.
Exactly. Hello.
Yeah.
But yeah, this has been a great convo. Did you have anything else? I know we had about an hour.
Mate, thank you for the time. I appreciate I mean, just again, I just want to say that you're a legend, mate. What you've achieved is awesome. And I'm look, obviously it's not like see you later, see you on the other side. Like I'm interested to keep up with you
For sure.
and see how all this goes forward. Yeah. But cheers.
And with your
thank
work
you.
as well. I'll keep
Yeah.
up.
I mean, I don't know what I'm taking more of a longer term approach to that. Now, YouTube's not the place for me now. It's not worth the effort. But I will be, yeah, probably a book of some sort
That'd be
where
great.
I'll just put all this stuff out in the public and be done with it. Yeah. But that's a long term thing, a year or two. So
Sounds great. And I'll keep in touch with you and keep posting things. And I want to thank everybody that showed up in the chat. I appreciate you very much. Everybody have a great one.
are there any questions
ahead.
from the chat? I don't know. I haven't been watching the chat. Is there anything there?
One person at the top did ask you, that was Noah, I believe, why you want things to die or something. I think he was responding to antinatalism.
Let's not get into that. I'll just quickly say antinatalism. That's Efilism. I mean,
I know.
Efilism.
He didn't know yet. Why do you want to end life? There we go.
Okay. Well, I don't want to end all life.
Right.
That's another conversation, but that's not antinatalism. That's Efilism, and I'll leave it there.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you. And it's really cool to see people like yourself that, you are one of those people that seems very level and bright, and you're dealing with this dark stuff. And that gives me hope that I'll be able to maintain that as well. So I appreciate you.
No worries, mate. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. See you.